Paul writes in verse 6 is that love has no joy in unrighteousness. Look what he says right there, verse 6. He writes and says, love finds no joy in unrighteousness. Now, this is kind of a two-sided sword, so to speak, because he's going to talk about the thing, and we've been dealing the last few weeks at all the things that love doesn't do, and then halfway through this verse, he begins back to the positive. He starts saying this is what love does. And so this two-sided sword is how you and I respond and react in love. And the first part of that is love has no joy in unrighteousness. In other words, if there's something that's not right, as a believer and a child of God, we have no joy in talking about or watching or being a part of or involving ourselves in anything that's not right, anything that's founded from a root of sin. We take no joy in that. So anything that's sinful for the child of God, we don't think about those things as good things when we walk in true love. So love, true love, finds no enjoyment in unrighteous acts. What are some unrighteous acts? Well, the way you and I often act towards people inside the body of Christ where we are. We hear something about somebody, and instead of being protective of that person, we begin to spread that, and that's called what? Gossip, okay? So when I hear gossip, what ought to be triggered in me is a feeling of repulsiveness. It's not a righteous thing. Or when I hear about a believer that's struggling with their faith, or maybe they've grown a little bit cold in their heart, and they're not as engaged as they once were. When those things happen, I shouldn't take joy and say, well, I'm glad I'm not like them, or I'm glad I'm doing better than they are. Anytime that something's going on inside the body of Christ that's not right, there ought to be something wrong in me that says, or something in me that says, hey, that's wrong. And I need to be praying about that.